The White Lamb's Secrets. It is said, the lamb once stood at the edge of the world, its fleece white as the light before the fall. But time swallows stories, and silence grows where memory dares not tread. No one remembered the name of the guardian who vanished. No one spoke of the gate, sealed beneath the hills. And no one dared to ask why the white lamb was chosen to guard the crest of a kingdom. They called it a fable, a lullaby for the restless, a charm to keep the woods still. But the ground remembers. Even now, under green fields and wandering flocks, something sleeps. It dreams not of blood nor fire, but of truth unspoken and names erased. One day, the lamb will stir, and when it does, it will not bleat. It will speak. Part 1. Echoes of the Kingdom. Chapter 1. The Prince Among the Hills. The castle on the hill had no battlements, no watchtowers, no smoke from forges or horns for war. Instead, it had wind, wide wandering wind that carried the scent of wild thyme and wool across the meadows. And it had sheep, hundreds of them, like clouds fallen to earth, spilling over the rolling hills of Lyria like spilled flour. And in the middle of them, sometimes barefoot, always quiet, walked a boy with a silver crook and a crown he never wore. Merrick, son of King Arthur and Queen Elena, heir to the kingdom of the White Lamb. Though you wouldn't guess it, not by the way he crouched beside a newborn lamb in the morning fog, whispering softly to it, as though it could understand. "Don't be afraid," he said, brushing the dew from its trembling wool. "The world's gentler than it looks, sometimes." The lamb blinked at him, still wobbly, still unsure. Much like him. Merrick was 19, now old enough for sword training, for royal audiences, for endless talk of duty. But none of that had ever suited him. Not the jeweled halls, not the endless banquets, not the shadow his father's legacy cast like a banner over every step he took. He was a shepherd more than a prince, and the fields more of a home than the marble corridors of the palace. He liked it this way, most days. But lately the wind had changed. It whispered more. Sometimes, when he walked the upper hills, he could swear he heard a name carried through the grass. A name he did not know, but that stirred something old in his bones. And last night, in a dream, a lamb stood before him with black eyes and whispered in a voice not meant for a child of the throne. "You are not the first. You will not be the last." He woke cold, sweating, the fire dead. Now, crouched in the damp morning light, he looked toward the eastern ridge, where the woods began and the kingdom ended. Beyond that were lands forgotten, stories untold, and secrets, they said, best left buried. But the lambs had begun to stray there. And so, it seemed, had he. The bell at the eastern tower rang once. Morning call, a reminder that court would begin within the hour. Merrick sighed and rose, the crook still in his hand, the lamb now nestled beside its mother. It would live. Not everything did, these days. He made his way up the slope, boots damp with dew, cloak brushing against yellow wildflowers. From this high, he could see Lyria stretched like a tapestry below, low cottages scattered between fruit groves, farmlands bordered by white stone, and at the center, rising clean and pale as the moon, the Palace of the Lamb. Its spires weren't golden or grand, they were humble, carved from ivory-hued marble and capped in silvery gray, meant to reflect light, not blind others with it. His mother insisted it was more than enough. His father, not always. As Merrick stepped through the grazing gates and toward the narrow garden path, a voice called from behind a vine-covered pillar. "You're late. Again." He didn't need to turn to know. It was Lord Roger, his tutor, his father's advisor, and the only man in the palace who could frown while smiling. "The court waits for no shepherd, Your Highness." Merrick brushed a leaf from his shoulder. Then perhaps it's time the court waited for something that actually matters. Roger chuckled under his breath. And what matters then? Sheep? Merrick didn't answer. Not because he didn't know, but because he wasn't sure Roger would understand. Instead, he climbed the path, past the weeping willow that shaded the old statue, weather-worn and half-broken. The statue of a lamb on its knees, head bowed, with words half-faded at the base. To guard the white, to wait the day, to speak when silence falls away. He'd read those words 100 times. But lately, they felt less like a monument, and more like a message. One meant for him. Chapter 2. The Girl Beneath the Alder Tree. The village of Alaris was far from any map worth naming. It lay nestled between two ridges of pine and alder trees, where mist hung low in the morning and the rivers hummed like lullabies. Chickens wandered freely, roofs were thatched with golden straw, and the loudest sound was the wheelwright arguing with his own cart. To most, it was a place the world forgot. To Ilona, it was a place full of hidden things. She sat now beneath the wide-spreading alder near the village's edge, sketching lines into a worn leather notebook with a charcoal stub. Before her sat a cluster of wild mushrooms, dew still clinging to their caps. Red ring, white stalk, spore dust under the edge, she muttered. Not for tea, then. She made a note and turned the page. Ilona was 17, neither child nor grown, not noble, not quite peasant. Her parents ran the apothecary by the mill stream, and while they would have been happier with her learning proper medicine indoors, she preferred wandering, climbing trees, reading the strange old books left in the shop's back shelf, sketching plants no one else cared to name, and, most of all, asking questions. Lately, those questions had started to follow her home. Why did no one ever venture past the elder grove to the east? Why did the village elder wince when she asked about the ruins by the river? And what was that silver symbol she'd found on a broken stone last week, half covered in moss, an engraving of a lamb, circled in ancient letters? She hadn't shown that one to her parents. Not yet. You're always out with your head in the clouds, her mother would say. Better the clouds than the dust, Ilona would reply. Today, though, the clouds felt heavier. The wind was strange cooler, sharp like something had stirred far off. Ilona packed her notebook, stood, and looked toward the forest line. Beyond it lay the old path the hunters didn't use anymore, and a place marked only on the pages of books no one else read. She touched the pendant around her neck, plain, silver, and old. She'd had it since before she could remember. Then she turned back toward home. Tomorrow, maybe, she'd follow the path. Just a little farther. Chapter 3. Whispers in Marble. Merrick stood before the great hall's polished doors, shoulders straight, jaw clenched. The polished ivory stone beneath his boots glinted in the morning sun pouring through high windows. The walls were inlaid with soft gold scroll work and white lamb motifs, gentle reminders of purity, peace, and the long-standing oath of the kingdom. He didn't belong here. The moment he stepped into court, the air shifted. Eyes turned. Not with awe, not even respect, but the cool gaze of advisors and lords who measured him like weight on a scale. His mother, Queen Alina, met his eyes and offered a soft, knowing smile. His father, King Arthur, stood tall in his ceremonial silver cloak, distant as ever, though never cruel. The High Council murmured. Roger stepped forward. Your Majesty, the prince joins us on time enough, today. A few chuckles from the council. Merrick didn't smile. King Arthur's voice carried like stone on still water. Let us begin. Talk began of crops, of border disputes, of a wandering band of traders asking to camp beyond the western wood. Merrick stood silently, fingers twitching at his side. None of this felt real to him, not the silk banners above, not the jeweled staff at the king's side, not even the throne. And then something shifted. An older man in green robes stepped forward. Elder Kalen, keeper of ancient records. There has been, he said, clearing his throat, a disturbance. That got Merrick's attention. Where? The king asked. Kalen bowed slightly. In the upper grazing hills, near the hollow path, shepherds speak of strange sounds beneath the earth. And, he hesitated. There were markings, fresh, symbols we have not seen since before the sealing. The room froze. Silence. Merrick's blood cooled. Have the markings been examined? The queen asked. Yes, your grace. I am preparing an archive match now. But the initial sketch is identical to the crest of the Forgotten Watchers. Another long silence. His father spoke at last. That symbol has not been seen in over a century. It is forbidden, buried. Even buried things can stir, my king. Merrick said nothing, but his mind was racing. The ruins, the lamb statue, the dream. That phrase from the statue returned again. To guard the white, to wait the day. He left before the meeting ended. And no one stopped him. The garden paths twisted behind the palace, like forgotten stories, overgrown hedges, weathered statues, and soft trickling fountains no longer tended. This was the part of the palace Merrick preferred. It didn't ask anything of him. A white butterfly flitted past, wings catching the sunlight. He didn't follow it. He followed the memory of what Elder Kalen had said. The hollow path, symbols beneath the earth, crest of the Forgotten Watchers. He knew the name, not from court records, not from books aloud in the royal library, from his childhood. From the stories the nursemaids weren't supposed to tell. From the dream. He passed the orchard, stepped over the old gate, and mounted his horse in the lower stables. He didn't need a guard, not where he was going. The hollow path wasn't far, a low ridge beyond the northern flocks, where the ground sank in a slow spiral like a forgotten bowl. Locals claimed it was once a quarry. Merrick had always suspected it was older. He reached it by midday. Birds fell silent as he approached. He dismounted, tying the reins loosely to a bent branch. The wind was still, yet the air carried weight like the earth was holding its breath. Merrick crouched at the edge of the hollow. There, scrawled into the damp soil and stone, were symbols, faint, delicate, but deliberate. A circle, encasing a lamb's head. 3 lines beneath it, branching downward like roots or cracks. And at the base, something like an eye, watching. He reached out, fingers hovering just above the mark. And as his shadow touched it, he heard something. Not sound, not wind. A whisper, not in his ears, but in his bones. One word, faint, ancient. Return. Merrick stood up, quickly scanning the trees. No one. No wind. Only the echo of that word, pressing on his mind, like a memory not his own. He took out a bit of parchment and sketched the symbol quickly, then turned to leave. But as he stepped back, his boot hit something hard, not stone, not root. A carved edge, just beneath the grass. He knelt, brushed the earth aside. There, beneath the soil, was a slab, smooth and marked with the same crest, the lamb, the roots, the eye. He stared at it, heart pounding. Whatever this was, it had been buried on purpose, and someone had wanted it forgotten. Chapter 4. Beyond the Grove. The elder grove loomed taller than Ilona remembered. Its trees were twisted and thick-barked, their trunks spotted with moss and time. The villagers often warned children not to pass this line, not because of wolves, or thieves, or anything said plainly, but with a shrug and a muttered, "Just don't." Ilona had never listened well. That morning, she rose before the bell tower rang, packed a satchel with bread, her charcoal notebook, and a flint box, then slipped out the back door without a sound. The silver pendant at her neck felt heavier today, colder. She'd dreamed of a white lamb in the woods last night. It had stared at her. Not afraid, not running, just watching. Ilona reached the base of the oldest tree and placed her hand against the bark. She whispered softly, not expecting a reply. "What are you hiding?" The path beyond twisted downhill, thick with fern and fog. Birds chirped less here. The wind was slow, cautious. She passed fallen stones half buried in soil, broken carvings, possibly ancient. Some showed symbols, smoothed with time. One looked like a star, another a spiral. And then she found it. A ring of standing stones, weathered, cloaked in vine and root, 7 in all, arranged in a circle. In the center was a shallow hollow in the earth, like something had once rested there. Ilona stepped inside. Suddenly, her pendant gave a faint pulse against her chest. She gasped and held it up. The silver warmed to her skin. A faint glow shimmered at its edges, flickering once and then gone. The wind picked up. Leaves rustled. She crouched by the center of the circle and brushed away the dirt. A flat stone plate appeared, faintly carved with the same lamb crest Merrick had seen miles away, a lamb's face, lines spreading below it like roots, and a circle encasing it all. Ilona's fingers trembled. She sketched the design in her notebook. "This wasn't in any of the old village books," she whispered. She glanced around. The air pressed in, not in a frightening way, but like the trees were listening. Then she noticed one of the stones had fallen and cracked, revealing something inside, a hollow core, carved with more symbols. Letters. Ancient script. She tore a page from her notebook and made a rubbing with charcoal. When she stepped back, 3 words had appeared on the paper, their meaning clear despite their age. One watches still. Chapter 5. The Pull of What's Hidden. Merrick paced the tower library, a parchment of the strange crest laid before him. Books lay scattered, many unopened. The royal archives were filled with volumes on grain taxes, treaties, and ceremonial etiquette, but precious little on the ancient past. He tapped his fingers restlessly, then reached again for the rubbing he'd made of the stone slab. The circle, the lamb, the roots, the eye. Forgotten watchers, he muttered. Why is no one talking about this? The whisper still echoed in his memory. Return. He couldn't sleep the night before. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the buried crest glowing, then sinking beneath water. A lamb watched him from the shore, but its eyes were like mirrors. He didn't tell his father, not yet, not until he knew more. Instead, he pulled his cloak over his shoulders, tucked the parchment into his tunic, and made for the western gate. If the answers weren't in the books, he would find them in the land itself. Far from the castle, in the village of Ilaris, Ilona sat beneath the candlelight of her family's cottage, staring at the paper she had taken from the stones. One watches still. She flipped back through her notebook, dozens of sketches, symbols, and observations from the Elder Grove. Her heart buzzed with more questions than answers. What did the Watchers guard? Why her pendant? And why now? Her grandmother shuffled in from the kitchen with tea, but paused when she saw the notebook. You went past the Elder Grove again, didn't you? Ilona nodded slowly. I had to. Her grandmother sighed, then sat beside her. I hoped you wouldn't feel the pull. Not yet. Ilona looked up. You know something, don't you? The old woman didn't answer for a long while. Then she reached out and touched the pendant hanging from Ilona's neck. That belonged to your mother, she said softly, and before her, to someone who was never meant to be forgotten. Ilona blinked. What do you mean? But her grandmother shook her head. Not yet. When the time is right, you'll understand. Just remember this, not every secret should stay buried. That night, both Merrick and Ilona stood alone, beneath the same moon, miles apart. But both watched the stars, both holding symbols they didn't understand, both wondering what it meant to be watched and chosen. Chapter 6. The Choice to Leave. The morning mist clung to the cobblestone courtyard as Merrick tightened the leather straps on his satchel. He wasn't running away, not exactly, but he wasn't asking for permission either. The sun hadn't risen yet, and only the old steward, Bram, stood in the outer corridor of the stables, watching him with a faint crease in his brow. "You've never been the kind to rise before the rooster," Bram said. "I'm not running," Merrick replied calmly. "I'm searching." The steward didn't argue. He stepped closer, then slipped a wrapped parcel into Merrick's hand. "Then take food. And this." He pulled out a bronze medallion marked with the royal seal. Merrick shook his head. "If I use that, people will know who I am." "And maybe they should," Bram replied. "Not every king is crowned from a throne. Some are shaped by the road." Merrick said nothing. He mounted his horse, nodded once, and rode out through the old gate, the one that hadn't been used since the time of his grandfather. The kingdom was waking behind him, but something older waited ahead. In Alaris, Ilona packed in silence. Her grandmother had given her no more clues, only a single object wrapped in cloth and sealed with wax. "When the sun touches the hollow stone," she'd whispered, "you'll know when to open it." Ilona hadn't dared peek inside. She stuffed it between her journal and satchel of dried herbs. Her heart pounded with a strange mix of terror and excitement. She wasn't a warrior. She wasn't a noble. She wasn't anyone that mattered in the old songs. But still, something called to her. She stepped outside, the village quiet, the grass still wet with dew. A few early risers waved, but no one asked where she was going. She passed the elder grove one more time and knelt beside the standing stones. She laid her hand on the earth where the ancient crest had appeared. "I don't know what you want from me," she whispered, "but I'm going to find out." She turned and walked west, toward the hills that marked the edge of the known map. Elsewhere, far above both of them, hidden deep in a crumbling tower, cloaked in ivy and forgotten spells, a mirror flickered to life. It was not glass, but stone polished to such smoothness that it caught reflections of people who had never stood before it. And in that mirror, two images shimmered. A boy on horseback, riding fast toward the wilds, and a girl with fire in her steps, walking into a fog-laced path. A voice, no longer young, no longer bound, whispered to no one. "They have chosen. Let them find what was lost. Let them wake the lamb." That night, in opposite corners of the realm, Merrick and Ilona both found shelter beneath the trees. They slept with maps half read and dreams they could not explain. And neither knew that their paths, once so far apart, would soon collide. In the ruins of what was once the Watcher's Hold. The sky over the White Lamb Kingdom bled violet and silver. Merrick stood alone on the western tower balcony, the wind tugging at his cloak. The city below slowly yawned to life. Bakeries stoked morning fires, guards changed post, and bells rang softly for prayer. It should have been a peaceful morning. But something felt wrong, or perhaps unfinished. His hands clenched the rail. "Why won't anyone talk about it?" he muttered aloud. He had uncovered a crest buried in stone, a symbol older than the kingdom itself. He had heard whispers in his dreams, felt the tremble of something ancient brushing against his soul. And yet, the court only talked about harvests and trade. He turned and descended the stairs, each step firmer than the last. Today, he wouldn't wait for permission. The mystery called too loudly. He entered his room and began packing. Just the essentials: dried fruit, a small knife, a bedroll, charcoal sticks, and blank parchment. He hesitated over the sword above his hearth, but took it, not for battle, but for memory. It had belonged to his mother. As he strapped the blade across his back, his door creaked. Bram, the aging steward, stood in the frame with a candle. "Thought I might find you here," the old man said. "There's a look in your eye, same one your father had before the old wars." Merrick didn't pause. "Do you think I'm wrong?" Bram shook his head. "No, but roads like this don't come back the same way twice." He handed Merrick a worn leather satchel. Inside, wrapped in cloth, was a small compass carved with the sigil of the White Lamb, but older, wilder, as if etched before the sigil had ever become royal. Merrick met his eyes. "Where did you get this?" "Your mother," Bram said quietly. "She never told me where it came from, only that it pointed to more than direction." Ilona fastened her cloak as the fog rolled through the village of Ilaris. Her breath rose in white curls as she stepped beyond her doorstep. Few villagers were awake. Fewer still would ask where she was going. She was always wandering. But this time, she wasn't coming back so soon. The package from her grandmother lay deep in her bag, sealed with wax, bound in faded cloth. She hadn't opened it yet. Some part of her was afraid. Instead, she focused on the trail ahead. She turned west, past the stone wall that ringed the grove, her boots pressed into damp grass, dew clinging to the hem of her dress. At the edge of the elder grove, she paused. The trees stood like sentinels. Shadows hung long between them. But now she didn't fear it. Not since the pendant had glowed in that stone circle. Not since she'd uncovered the crest. Something is watching. But maybe it's waiting too. Ilona laid her palm on one of the stones and whispered, "I don't know what this is yet, but I won't let it stay forgotten." She stepped beyond the grove and into the forest paths few dared to walk. Her heart pounded, not with fear, but with anticipation. Far to the north, in a long abandoned sanctuary, buried beneath root and ruin, a bell rattled where no wind blew. A withered hand, cloaked in robes of dust and moth-eaten velvet, touched a circle carved in stone. The circle flared faintly, like something stirred behind it. Two threads pulled, croaked a voice like stone breaking. And so the tapestry begins to unravel. The watchers sleep no longer. Candles flickered across old relics, bones, pages, symbols etched in forgotten tongues. The voice whispered again, "Let the children come. Let them chase what was buried. Let the white lamb bleed." That night, Ilona made camp in a hollow beside a stream, her fire small and flickering. She read her journal again and again. Her thoughts swirled. That same crest, the lamb surrounded by lines and roots, showed up again and again in her dreams. She did not know the boy who rode through the hills miles away, but she had dreamed of him once. A face in shadow, a sword that did not shine, but pulsed. And across a ruined bridge, the echo of a lamb's cry in the dark. Merrick, farther south, lay beside a low fire, under a crumbling archway in the hills. He'd ridden hard, and only now let his horse graze. He too dreamt. A white field, a circle of standing stones, a girl standing in the center with eyes like firelight on water. Neither knew it yet, but they were dreaming of each other. And somewhere, ancient eyes opened. End Part 1. Echoes of the Kingdom.